Showtime. It's showtime. All right. We're live. We're live.
We're here.
Round two. We are here. I am here in my house this time.
Yeah.
So little different scenery. I don't think I've ever filmed a video in my house. But we got a new puppy. So if
Be on
my
the
wife
lookout.
is on here, she might be on here watching. There's one person watching. It's probably my wife. I am at home with the puppy to make sure she doesn't tear up the house.
Good job. Good work.
Yes. Yeah. So fun show today. Today is the official start of hurricane season, which runs from June 1st all the way to November 30th, which I know scares a lot of people when we tell them how long it is, but generally the storms come August to end, mid-August to end of September, beginning of October is like peak season, but they just make it half the year for some reason.
Exactly.
I don't know why. So we kind of want to just talk about like what we do, how we prepare, how you can prepare. We get a lot of questions about people moving here that aren't used to hurricanes. I was terrified when my wife can attest to this, that the first storm we went through ended up just being a tropical storm and I made her evacuate.
Yeah.
And that's how scared I was at first. And now I'm not as scared, but they're still terrifying.
Yeah, it's tough. I still would rather pick a hurricane over a tornado. The tornado, in the middle of the country. I don't know if I'm all about the 60-second warning type deal, and here it goes, and you better start running. At least we typically have days of, okay, we think there's a storm heading our way. How bad is it? We should go ahead and start some preparations and either stay or go. So, if you're picking or choosing your disasters, I would lean on that one. At least you have some planning that you can do ahead of time.
Yeah. So real quick, I want to start because I just read the prediction stats for this year. So I'm going to bring those up on here. Let me just figure out how to share my screen.
Yeah, I haven't seen these, so interested to see what they're saying for 2023.
Yes. So here we go. Can you see that?
Hey, yeah, of course.
All right. So this year's outlook, there is a 40% chance of a near normal season, 30% above normal, and 30% below normal. Okay. I don't know what all that means, but we're going to have 12 to 17 named storms.
Okay.
5 to 9 becoming hurricanes, and 1 to 4 may become major. I think that's pretty low. I don't know what it usually is, but that kind of only 1 to 4 major. Those are probably go anywhere from Florida to Maine.
Exactly.
Right in the middle. So I guess fingers crossed that's all we get.
I feel like normally every season there's 1 or 2 names that end up popping up that the news is constantly talking about. But there's always, 15 storms out there, out there in the middle of the Atlantic that, they typically don't make the main news stream. There's always those one or two that, the Weather Channel starts driving to go do some quick segments on.
Yeah. I always tell my clients, like, especially if they're coming from elsewhere, that the biggest threat for a hurricane is going to be your family and your parents that don't live here, that only watch the Weather Channel.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Because here, I know this is, it comes, our first big tip is pay attention to the local weather and the local news, because they're going to tell you exactly what is happening in Charleston, whereas you watch the Weather Channel and Jim Cantori comes, like the entire country has their eyes on us, and they're pretty much going to say, we've got a comment here from Rob Ryan, I'm just going to show it, that Seabrook is going to get wiped out one year. This is what my mother thinks is going to happen every time there is a hurricane anywhere in the Atlantic Ocean, and that one little spaghetti model is like pointing at us.
Yeah.
Like this, she thinks not just Seabrook, she's like, Charleston's just going to get wiped off the face of the earth. And I always joke that that's going to be the most annoying thing about hurricanes.
Everybody checking in on you to make sure that you're okay.
Yeah, and I'm glad they check in on me. However, we're watching the local news, they're watching the national news, and it's a completely different narrative. Like the Weather Channel doesn't be like, Charleston's fine. They're like, there's a chance that Charleston will get wiped off the face of the earth.
Yeah, exactly.
So I want to ask you, Chris, like, so when storms are coming, like, what do you and your family do? Like, what generally, and I'll preface this with, please make your own decisions for you and your family. Again, I left for a tropical storm first. Yep. Now I don't leave for tropical storms, but that's what made me feel safe at the time, and my wife humored me. So do what you and your family feels right and feels safe. We're just telling you kind of how we go about it and our logic behind it.
Yeah, so I mean, listen, every year is different. Every storm is different. We have 3 small kids. We've got 2 dogs. We have elderly grandmother that we also help take care of, that lives in assisted living here in town. And every single season it's always different. I mean, for us, even though it might seem like a small storm, a lot of times it's just easier on our family just to load up the car and drive 3 hours up to the upstate of South Carolina, where I've got some family, and just end up doing an extended weekend there. So typically, if it's a storm where we feel it's going to be a category 3 or more, we're definitely rolling out. But a lot of times what we'll see is that 1 or 2 where maybe we don't feel like sitting in traffic. Maybe we feel like it's not going to be that bad. And a lot of times we're kind of waiting until that 24 to 48 hour window before the storm is supposed to hit landfall before making that call. So before that time, we're making sure that everything at home is, have I went ahead and put up the patio furniture, the tables, the chairs, any of the outdoor heaters, that kind of stuff. We make sure we go ahead and put that up, make sure my car is filled with gas, make sure the propane tanks are filled up in case I need to use the grill. But, in years past, we have stayed. I've rented a small generator from like a True Value, where you can literally rent it for $50 or $75 a day. And that's enough for me to run a refrigerator or a freezer, that I've got in the garage, just to make sure I don't lose a bunch of food that I can just put away for a few days. Of course, there are a lot of people here in town that have whole house generators. That's a whole nother thing that you could certainly, get your home hooked up with. We've got some family in our neighborhood that has a whole house generator, so we can drive over to their house and, still have some power. But, I feel like there was a few years in a row, I think 2018, 19, and maybe 20, that we rolled out. We loaded up the car and we got out of town. But then most recently, I don't remember recently leaving town. It's been more of, okay, we might lose power for 24 hours. And that is one thing here where we don't have, when we get hit by snow, we get shut down for days. We don't have the salt trucks. We don't have all the stuff to stay prepped for that. But when we lose power, which happens a lot, like our linemen in the power companies, they are out there working nonstop. All you hear is just chainsaws that next day, getting brush cleaned out. So it's really fantastic because we do have a lot of help when it comes to that. So again, like Bill said, every storm's different. For me and my family, it's just easier to typically roll out with the kids, just because that way they get to go see some family. We'll go do something fun. We'll lock down our house as best as possible. And I don't have plywood. I mean, there are some folks that have all the plywood. We don't have that. We're just, we hope for the best. And then when we come back, we see what's happened.
Yeah. And with the generators and losing power, I mean, there's areas around here that if like 4 people sneeze at the same time, you lose power for 3 hours. So that's why a lot of people have generators too, is like, there are times where, especially when we lived on John's Island.
Yep.
The power, it happened to us Christmas Eve a few years ago, 2 years ago. The power went out for like 2 hours. Luckily, we have our gas powered generator. So we just used that and we were able to like, turn some lights on and everything. But it happens. It's not just for hurricanes that you need a generator around here.
Exactly. No, that's right.
But like what we do, and we are kind of the same way as you with that. If it's a 3 or more, it's a 100%, we are out.
Yeah.
That 1 to 2 is we figure it out. We're always ready to leave.
Yep.
If we need to. But, I did a video a few years ago with Josh Marthers, who's a local meteorologist.
Yep.
I will put that down below in the description after we're done here. And it was a very eye-opening conversation with him. I learned a lot that, people just think that a category 1, 2, 3, that it's a very defined thing, but it's not. There's like different levels, and whether it's a storm surge hurricane or a wind hurricane or a rain hurricane or a combination of both, they affect the area different. So that's, again, why you need to be on the local news, because they're going to tell you all of that, but also kind of where Charleston sits, because we're kind of like tucked in, almost facing south, that if you look at where storms generally go, knock on wood, so we don't jinx anything this year, but if they're coming towards us, you watch them, they generally push north or south. Everyone talks about Hugo, and everyone thinks that Hugo just like came barreling through Charleston. It was actually in Georgetown. It was between us and Myrtle Beach is where it made landfall. It was just so big and so strong that the whole coast felt it.
Exactly.
But that one even went north of us. So, I mean, we would have been gone for that. I mean, I think it's like a badge of honor around here. You talk to people and they're like, I stayed.
Yeah. I was here for Hugo, right? Yeah.
I lived through Hugo. I can live through anything.
Exactly.
But it's just interesting. It's interesting video to watch just from a meteorologist standpoint who, he's been doing it here for over 20 years, I think. And he's seen all these storms, just where they go. So, like you said, like that last 48 to 24 hours, is crucial to know what's going to happen because they move so slow.
Exactly.
And it's like being stalked by a turtle.
It really is. You go to bed at night, it's in the middle of Florida, you wake up and it's, just hitting Georgia. You're like, okay, let's see what's going on here.
Right. Rarely does it just like pop up and be here. So that's the nice thing about hurricanes being our natural disaster of choice, I guess you could call it.
Exactly.
Because we have so much time to prepare for it. California, an earthquake, gone. Everything's gone. I mean, tornadoes, yes, we have them here, but they're not as prevalent as they're all in Kansas, I think. But even those, like in the Midwest, a tornado just pops up, can level a neighborhood and be gone in 5 minutes. Yes, hurricanes are the size of our state or bigger. That makes them very scary. But the amount of time you have to prepare is, I think, what makes them my preferred natural disaster.
Yep. No, 100% right. I mean, in living here, you end up getting used to, having some cases of water in the garage. Like you end up just having stuff where, you're trying to avoid that last minute rush to the grocery store, the day before a hurricane. I mean, you're going to roll up there. The shelves are going to be empty. All the toilet paper is going to be gone. The water is going to be gone. The bread's going to be gone.
Why is all the perishable stuff gone? People take bread and milk.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know what they think is going to happen with all that, but no, I mean, it just makes sense. You end up having a stockpile, and then you kind of just end up doing your normal checklist, like I went through. Okay, I'm going to get my furniture out of the way outside. I'm going to shut all the doors, shut the garage doors. Maybe put a couple sandbags here and there if you need them. It depends on where you live. And you typically know if you're going to have any sort of water intrusion, because here with our rain and tides, you end up finding out if there's a concern with water very quickly. It's not just this from a hurricane that you figure that out. And also the tides. It's not just the storm surge. It's also, well, hey, it's going to be a high tide at 2:00 in the afternoon, and that happens to be. I feel like that happened either maybe 2 years ago, where storm surge and high tide were hitting at the same time, and there was like 8 feet extra of water, that was coming in.
Oh yeah, and another thing to always check, like let's say you're moving to the area, and with any storms or flooding or anything, especially with flood insurance, this kind of goes along with what we're doing. But just a side note, like have your insurance agent run a check on FEMA claims on the property.
For sure.
The current owner might not know, but if historically someone had put a FEMA claim in for flood damage, like that is recorded. An insurance agent can look that up.
Exactly.
So just a little pro tip on that. But you talked about having the water, and we talked about the food. That brings me into the next thing I wanted to talk about with you is your hurricane prep kit. I'm terrible. I need to make a new one. But let's talk about like what people need to have in that. So like if you do decide to stay, you're not running to the store to get stuff. And canned food, water, I think they say like a couple gallons per day per person for that. More if you have pets, of course. Canned food, of course. So let's talk about everything kind of else. Like what do you guys like to keep around to have?
I mean, for us, a bunch of box, like, again, we've got kids, so we're going to have our cereals and our, stuff that we could just open up a can and, give them some raviolis and say, hey, just hang out. But for us, I mean, I always like to make sure that, I keep a big cooler. I keep that, I keep that stocked with ice, and that way I can keep some things cold. Again, if I feel that we are going to be staying and I'm concerned, I'm 100% going to try to either rent a generator or borrow a generator or do something like that. So at the very least, if I can just power my refrigerator and just keep some stuff cold. So every scenario is going to be different. I mean, if you feel that you don't have the ability to, get the generator or power, that's almost a recipe for you might just want to just roll out. I mean, just go ahead and head out of town. But if you're planning on staying, well, then you have to have the assumption that you might not have power for 2 or 3 days. I mean, so, and if you're planning on staying during that, then you need to prepare for that. And part of that is making sure that you've got some food to eat, you got some water to drink, and filling up your bathtub with water. That way you can flush your toilets or give your, pets water.
Keep a bath, bathe your kids.
Yeah, I mean, all that well, they might not be taking a bath. They might just be staying. They might just be hanging out.
Stinky.
But I think that every scenario is different. For me specifically, we've got family in the same neighborhood with a whole house generator. So if we're staying, we've done it before. We empty out our refrigerator. We take it over to their house. There's a fridge in their garage, load everything up in there. And it's like kind of our system. But then I've got friends that don't have family in town, don't have a whole house generator, and they're just rolling out of town unless they want to invest in, and this is one of those things where if you're at Lowe's, if this storm is supposed to hit on Sunday and you're at Lowe's on Saturday asking what aisle are the generators in, they might laugh at you because it's already too late. So, if you're living here on the coast and your plan is to, hey, I'm probably going to be staying for a couple of these storms here and there, it is not a bad investment to, invest in a few $100 generator. I mean, you'd be surprised what a couple big 5-gallon jugs of gas and a small little generator that you keep outside, not inside. You don't want to die with carbon monoxide poisoning.
Or in your garage.
Or in your garage. It needs to be outside and then run an extension cord to it. But I mean, again, like if you're planning on staying, you need to, what am I going to eat? What am I going to drink? Do we have all of that stuff? And can we keep our food cold? And those are the things that we're typically thinking of.
Mm-hmm. And you don't need to run that generator 24 hours a day. if your fridge is cold and you don't open it,
that's
the food's going to stay cold for like 12 hours.
Yep. You're exactly right. It doesn't need to run all day.
So just turn it on for an hour if you've got to charge stuff up. We like to have, flashlights and a lantern, first aid kit. Like, make sure you know kind of where everything is that you have in that sense. Just in case. I mean, the storms always hit at night. For some reason, a storm never comes at like 10 o'clock in the morning. It's always like, storm's going to reach us at 2 in the morning. And I think that makes it even scarier because
because you just
it's already dark.
To it. Yeah.
But I've put a bunch of stuff down in the description that kind of from all the different sources on the web. Like, if you want to see, like, make sure you kind of have everything on there. It doesn't need to be all together, but make sure you have it and you know where it is if you're going to stay.
What's made it weird is social media has made it so weird because you'll wake up after that storm and you might not have power, and then you're scrolling on social media and you see kids down King Street driving their trucks with wakeboard ropes, and they're sitting there wakeboarding down, literally down East Bay and King Street filled with water. So it's a really, when you're watching.
Don't do that, people. Don't do that. It comes from the sewer.
It does. That's where it fills up from.
Yes. It is so disgusting. It makes me sick when I see people do that. I'm like, oh, that's like sewage. That's like
pretty much.
Yeah. No. Sorry. Don't it happens all the time, but yeah, it's gross.
What do you typically keep together?
With the kids, just you can't really rely on like just go watch your tablet for an hour.
No.
That might actually be worse than my parents up north when a storm comes through, is the fact that you're in the dark ages with your kids, and sometimes we try and limit screen time, but if you're stuck in the house, sometimes you just got to say, do this.
Yep.
And if you do have the tablet, you can download movies onto Netflix. So that's always, I don't know if you can hear the garbage truck is going by. So if there's a weird noise in the background, that's what that is. So make sure you kind of have movies downloaded on those, just if you need a break and they get a little antsy for not being able to leave the house. But just like games and cards and like, just make sure you have all of that stuff at the ready and you know where it is. So you can just, for the whole family, even if you don't have kids, like make sure you have something to keep yourselves entertained. And because if the power goes out, you don't have your TV, which brings me to our next point of have a battery powered or one of those crank radios.
Something.
So that you know what's going on. And if TV doesn't work, then you're not really going to be able to watch the news to see what's going on, and you're going to be flying blind. So make sure you have a communication device like that. If it's battery powered, make sure you have extra batteries for that and for your flashlight. We have one of those little like Coleman lanterns, the LED ones.
Yeah.
Because those are easy to just like put in the corner of a room or in the middle of a room. You can light up the whole room no matter what.
Fill your car up with gas. Don't do it the day before. If there's a storm potentially coming next week and people are talking about it, just drive. Go get your gas tank filled up, and that way
if you have 2 cars, just only drive one for that week. Leave the other one full.
Leave it full, and that way you can plug in your stuff into your car too, and charge a phone or tablet and stuff like that, or just go sit in it in some air conditioning for a little. Not in your garage though.
Not in your garage. But yeah, I never thought of that. Like if it's September, those storms are going to bring the temperature down naturally. But like after it, when it's gone, like that humidity could pump up pretty quick once that storm passes sometimes. So I never thought about that. Just go like sit in the car.
Just go see what's going
on. We've always like taken the golf cart out or walked around and like assessed damage. Like, check on the neighbors and make sure everyone's okay and see if anyone needs anything. is always I don't want to say like a pastime, but like once you can get out of the house, like that's a good way to, see if anyone needs help. If you have the generator, invite your neighbors over for a cold drink because they might not have one.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right.
And make sure any drinks that you have, you're okay drinking warm.
Awesome.
So like, don't keep a bunch of soda on hand.
Yeah.
If that's what, I like Dr. Pepper, but I'm not drinking one warm. I know you don't drink, Chris, but like I got some bourbon back there. Like I'm okay drinking that warm.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna be drinking my beer when the power goes out.
Yeah, you can drink it neat.
Yep. So bottles of water. We always keep a case or two from Costco in our garage at all times anyways, usually year round. So we always have it, but that's going to go first too. You're going to go to the store and cases of water are just gone. And that's like a week before the storm gets here.
Yeah, exactly. What about, have you dealt with any sort of, any sort of closing or transaction issues, like while you're working with clients and in the middle of a storm or a potential storm coming up?
Yeah. From both sides.
Yeah.
Whether you're selling a house or buying a house. On the buying a house side, one of the big things is insurance. Yeah. That once a storm is so far out, they will stop writing policies. So if you're scheduled to close and a storm is coming, make sure you're communicating with your insurance agent as close as possible, or your closing attorney, whoever, me, if I'm your agent, I hope. And then, if Chris is a lender, like we're all working together to make sure everything works and happens. But if they're not going to bind an insurance policy, it might not be until after that storm that they'll do it.
Which means you can't close.
Which means you can't close. And that, depending on the situation, could have a snowball effect for a bunch of people involved.
Yep.
So insurance agents are usually really good about communicating and saying, we need to do this now, or else we're not going to be able to do it. They will not let me do it if we don't do it in the next 24 hours. And I think that's the biggest thing from a buyer standpoint. And also, make sure that, your agent, if you're a buyer, is in communication with the listing agent to make sure that what's going on with the house.
Yep.
Some things that people don't think about, like if you have the plywood, if they're putting the plywood up and there aren't brackets, that means that they have to physically screw into the side of the house to put that plywood up. Exactly. If they are doing that, make sure that they repair that prior to closing.
Yep.
So that you don't have 10 holes around every window into your siding, because that just a normal rain is going to get water back there.
100%.
So make sure they have someone go in after the fact, seal those, make them watertight, because you don't want any water to get in, because that will cause you more problems down the road. A lot of the newer homes have the brackets. You just screw them on, so you don't really have to worry about that. But a lot of the older homes, they are physically drilling into the side of the house to put those boards up.
Yep.
Even if they don't do that, always schedule to go over and do a walkthrough after the storm. You 100%. Could be 3 weeks from closing, but as again, like me as a buyer's agent would be in communication with the listing agent, say, let us know as soon as this storm passes, as soon as everyone is okay. And even if there is damage or there isn't damage, we're going to go through the house.
Yep.
If
you want to go through it,
if everything's been going well, sometimes a lot of people are like, I don't want my buyers and my sellers to meet. And like, I kind of do if everything's going well. If there's like this, like we don't. But if it's been a pretty smooth transaction, that is the perfect time to have them meet and say, hey, like, did anything happen in the neighborhood or to the house, like during the storm? How were you guys? Like, what do you guys do in this situation? Like, that's they don't have to vacate the house when you do that. You're basically going over there to make sure that there wasn't any damage or any major damage at that point, because again, that could extend closing.
Yeah.
And the earlier you catch it, the better.
That's right.
And then on the other side, on the seller side, like, make sure that you're in constant communication with your agent so that they can relay that information. Because the best thing you can do is, I want to relay the information to the buyer's agent before they have to ask for it. If something happened, like, tell your agent so that they can say, hey, this happened, but we're taking care of it.
Yep.
Because you don't want any surprises.
Nope. Go ahead and talk it through in advance.
Yep.
Much easier.
Say, hey, a storm's coming, even before it's there. I mean, like, hey, with this storm, like, what's your plan?
Yep.
Because I need to let the buyer know, because the buyer's probably freaking out.
Oh, of course.
And they're moving from somewhere else.
Yeah.
And the buyer's like, storm's coming. We're moving in 3 weeks, and this storm's going to take our house out, and we're going to be homeless. Like, that's what goes through every buyer's head when they're under contract and a storm is on its way.
Yep.
So it's just a lot of communication, and make sure that, you're prepared. Turn off your water if you're vacating. So if, something happens and a pipe bursts somewhere, it's not going to flood the house that way.
Exactly. Yep. And we do a lot of that stuff, even if there's checks and balances. If you are getting financing, if we are declared a disaster area, which is, that's going to be a federal declaration, and you haven't closed yet, then we're going to require that we have either an inspector or an appraiser go back out to the property and take photos and make sure that the property is still okay. Now, are they going to get underneath the house and everything? Probably not. But at least they're going to go there to make sure that the house still exists and there's not some sort of crazy storm damage that has happened. And those are typically the headaches that we get on our end, especially if, it might be, let's say it's today, Thursday, and someone is set to close tomorrow. Well, storm is coming tomorrow. That doesn't mean that you're closing on Monday, probably after, everybody wakes up after the weekend and it's beautiful outside, everything's fine. And they're like, okay, we're ready to close. And we're like, we can't right yet. Our Charleston County has been designated a disaster area by the federal government. We have to go out there and verify that the property is still okay. All those things have to take place. So, but when this is something like, obviously I would always say work with a local lender, but we are used to these requirements and it is very easy for us. And we know, all right, we've got 10 deals that we need to get final inspections on today. We need to have appraisers. Sometimes they'll even let us go out there and take photos. Sometimes they'll let the realtor go out there and take photos. So, if you're working from with somebody in the middle of Iowa at a call center, they might just be reading a guideline that says disaster area can't close. And then they're trying to figure out, okay, well, what do we do in this case? Whereas here in Charleston, like, we know what to expect. We know the drill.
Yep.
And it's, okay, let's get all these properties inspected as quickly as possible. Let's get some photos in, put them in the file, and that way everybody can go ahead and close and get moved in as quickly as possible.
And if a major storm comes through, even if you go under contract and that storm comes through in 2 days, you still might be delayed on your closing because our closing attorney's offices are going to close. Yep. So everything that they had scheduled for 2 or 3 days has to get moved.
Yeah, it takes time to get back on schedule.
From a scheduling standpoint, now they've got to start filling in different places. So just be patient.
Exactly.
With whether you're buying, you're selling, or if there's any other agents or loan officers watching this, everyone just needs to be patient because this is something out of our control.
Yep.
but
you learn a lot. The longer you live here, I mean, it just, and that's why, of course, someone that's been here for 50 years, they're like, oh, I'm not worried about anything. But of course, the first time, I don't care if it's a hurricane, 1, 2, tropical storm, like it is nerve wracking. And especially if you have kids at home and everybody's nervous and scared. But the longer you live here, the more that you realize, okay, we know the drill. Like there's going to be the national news, there's the local news, there's Mike's weather page that we're watching, and then
always Mike. Always watch Mike.
There's the live social media updates on videos saying, okay, storm's hitting Folly Beach, and here's the Instagram live video. This is what it looks like. And the longer that you hear, the more that you're like, okay, last year I should have done this because that was really annoying. I didn't fill up my tub with water, and I flushed once, and then I didn't have water to use, and listen, the water doesn't automatically just go out. So I mean, it takes some stuff for us not. Right. I don't remember the last time water went out during a storm. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah. So I'm going to start with one, but so you can start thinking about it, like over time that you've learned like hacks or tricks to whether you're staying or leaving to make things easier for you and your family or for anyone. My wife taught me this one is freeze a cup of water in your freezer and put a quarter on top of it if you're evacuating.
Yep.
Because if you're leaving, you don't necessarily know how long your power was out unless you're like talking to your neighbor the whole time. When you come back, if that quarter is still on top of that ice, your food's good.
Yep.
If that quarter is at the bottom of that cup and there's ice on top of it, throw all your food out.
Yeah, it completely thawed out, and and then it was able to refreeze. So that's a great one. You just got to remember to do it because that's the one that I always forget to do.
Yeah, the biggest tip is to remember to do that, but if you remember to do it, you'll know exactly, if it's just down like just a little bit, your food's probably still good.
Yeah, exactly.
Because a lot of that ice stayed. Don't put it in like a keg or anything because it'll stay. Put it in like a plastic cup.
Yep.
So that's my biggest like hack on how to know. Do you have anything that you guys do that's like, like, come on, blow my mind. You put the boat in the water so you could ride out the storm.
I have. I mean, last sidebar, my wife is an extreme shark tooth connoisseur. And every time without fail, after a storm comes, the most recent one, the day, I think a storm hit at 9 or 10 a.m. And this was last October. And then we were in the water that afternoon to go find shark's teeth on an island that we knew that when the waves go absolutely crazy out there, we were out there. We were the only boat out there, but yes, we did make it out there. I have a ton of coolers. I'm a boater. I've got a commercial ice machine on my back deck. I will fill up my coolers with ice. If there's any meat or things that I'm concerned about, I just pack those on the bottom, load them up with ice, and shut them. And I know no matter what, that those could stay for multiple days, and I don't worry about those. So if you have a bunch of stockpiled food like that you're very concerned, which a lot of people here in Charleston, they either fish or they hunt, or it is very normal for you to have a freezer full of stuff. And I know that we're one of those families that does, and typically we'll load up a freezer and I'll go ahead and shut that, and that one won't be open. That's not like my go-to, let me go grab some burgers, out of it. That's the one I'm going to keep shut and put away in the garage and filled to the top with ice. And that way I don't have to worry about it. But that's me getting ice, filling up my coolers, and making sure my propane tanks and then my gas is filled up. Those are normally the mindset of, because here's the reality. If that 24-hour window, if we decide to go, getting gas on Long Point Road, more than likely the gas that they're going to be empty because everyone's going to be there the night before or the day of filling up with gas, and it happens every time. So I go ahead and get filled up on gas, and that way I could literally drive 3 hours away and not be bad. But one thing to keep in mind is when you move to a town like this, like I said, when we get hit by snow, it's debilitating. If you're
it's an adult snow day, it's awesome.
I mean, when people move here from New York, New Jersey, everywhere, you have to understand, if it is raining and there's a chance that it might get below 32 degrees, school's closed. If it might rain and it might freeze, bridges are shut down, everything's shut down.
That's 48 hours prior.
Yeah, exactly. So people laugh at us, but for evacuation style, I'll tell you what, man, they flip these highways. And here's my tip, my tip of the day. Look at the evacuation plan for where you live, look at the highways, and do whatever you can to get on the opposite side. So when they reverse the highway, you get on that one. Because I'll never forget, I think it was in 2018, where I went a roundabout way to make it to be able to enter the highway in reverse. And there was barely anybody on that lane, and everyone else was just stuck on the normal lane. So that is my tip. If you're going to evacuate,
we did the same. We didn't go around, but because there's not every exit is letting you go on
exactly. That's what I'm saying.
The reverse lane. It's only like once every 10 or 15 miles lets you get on. Figure out where to get on. It might take you 20 minutes longer to get on, but especially once you get up towards Columbia, everyone is at a dead stop, and you're 70.
We were rolling,
and they're 7. Yep. Yes, that is a very good one.
That's a good tip. Learn your evacuation and try as much as you can to get on the reverse lane. You'll be glad that you did. That's a good one.
Now everyone's going to get on the reverse lane that watches this, and then we'll just do the regular one.
Hey,
and next year we'll do this video and be like, "Don't get on the reverse lane."
Don't get on that. No, it's Bill's right. They don't make it. It's not every exit. So if I were leaving directly from my house, there would not be a way to. I remember that year that we did it. I happened to be in off Dorchester Road, and I took the Ridgeville exit, which is exit 190 something. But we were able to get out there, and it saves a whole bunch of time. And then you're just laughing at everybody, stuck in traffic.
Yeah, we did it. We lived on Johns Island. It was 526 coming from West Ashley was the first one that you could get on. And it just so happened we went that way. This is nice. Then on the way back, take the back roads.
We took back roads. That's Hurricane Matthew. Hurricane Matthew is where we literally drove back roads from Greenville to Charleston. And there was a tree here and there that you're kind of driving around, but for the most part, it was beautiful country. We were cruising, going 40 miles an hour, but we weren't stuck. We weren't just at a standstill.
Yeah. I'm one of those people that regardless, if it's 20 minutes to get somewhere on the highway, but you're only going to be going 10 miles an hour, or you go around and it's 5 to 10 minutes longer, but you're not going to stop, I'm going the longer route because I don't just want to sit there. That's
Same here.
That's usually how I am.
Yeah.
No matter what. So cool. Oh, hurricanes.
Hurricanes, man. So, it just is what it is.
Yeah. It is what it is. It's a way of life.
Yeah. I mean, that's truly what it is. You do what you can to prepare. You're patient, and that's all you can do. And the first couple, you're going to be stressed out, and that stress never goes away, but it does feel better when all right, if we lose power, I've already done my checklist. I've already got my stuff set aside to where I need to be.
One more thing I just thought of about if you do evacuate, you've got family in Greenville, we've got family or friends and friends and family in Charlotte. So if we leave, we have a place to go.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that don't.
No, you're right.
Within a drive. The hotels in any city within a 5-hour drive of the coast will be sold out.
Yeah.
So Airbnbs will be sold out if you wait until 24 to 48 hours beforehand.
Yep.
So if you don't already have a friend or family's house to stay at, I wouldn't wait until the last minute.
Yep.
I wouldn't wait until 24 to 48 hours. Yep. I would have everything planned and say, we might leave then, but we are leaving because we got a hotel.
Yep.
We had to get a place to stay. I think a hurricane, they call them.
Oh, we've done that. We drove up to North Carolina. This sounds so ridiculous, but we went apple picking. We took the kids and went apple picking up in Nashville.
Oh, nice.
We ran into, so many families. They were all there from Charleston. They're like, well, look, we're getting out of town.
Yeah, businesses are closed, schools closed. Like, I think that kind of falls into that. Like, have something to entertain you.
Yeah.
Like the whole shark tooth thing. Like, the second the storm is gone, like, you guys go out. Like, we need to do something. We've been stuck in this house for the storm.
Yep.
Let's get out of the house. Like, going up to Asheville to go apple picking is great because it's something to do. Don't think the weather up there is going to be perfect, though, because that storm is pushing that way.
Oh, for sure.
It's going to be kind of chilly up in the mountains.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's far enough inland.
Exactly.
That, you might get a little bit of rain. It'll be a little chilly, but it'll give you something to do.
Exactly. 100%.
And that's what it comes down to, is don't get bored.
Don't get bored. Have something lined up, and that way you've got something to do and something going on. So, man, I think that those are all good tips, good food for thought.
Yes. And I think we covered a lot today.
I think so.
A lot.
I think so.
So if you guys
some mortgage
have
stuff,
any questions, concerns, like, hit us up. All of our contact information is down below. If you have any real estate or mortgage questions, if you have any insurance questions, reach out to us and get you in touch with our insurance agents that we work with, and they can help you kind of sort all that out of like, hey, what does it look like if we have a loss? Yeah. We were hoping to have my personal insurance agent on today. He got busy. He couldn't jump on. Yeah. So unfortunately, we didn't have that for you today, but he's available. Maybe we'll get him on another time, and we can just kind of talk about just all different insurances down here between hurricane and flood. Earthquake, we live on a fault. There's a fact for you.
We have it all.
That scared me when I found out.
Yeah, tell me about it.
To learn all of that. But I have one more thing, Chris. I haven't told you this. I have not told you this. There's a whopping 4 people watching us. So they get to see. I haven't posted this anywhere.
Okay.
Yet.
What is it?
Hold, please. Let me share my screen. Where is it? Share. Look at that. Look at that guy.
The top 10. Was there ever a doubt, though? Was there ever a doubt?
I know. Like, I was like, so I got a call a few weeks ago that someone had nominated me for this. And I was like, well, that's pretty cool. And they didn't say who, but they interviewed me. We had a great interview, and they're like, okay, we have what we need and we'll be in touch. There wasn't a like, hey, congrats, like this is going to happen. It was a congrats. The article is live. You're in Apple News. I was like, oh, okay. This just happened last week, and I haven't had time to like put everything together yet or grasp my head around it. So
definitely send me a link to that.
Yeah, will do. Oh, Nathan, thank you. Jake, thank you. Everyone's saying congrats in the comments.
That's awesome. That's awesome, man.
Thank you guys. Yeah, I figured that was something fun to share with you here. Like, where else would I share it? So
that's awesome, man.
And only the true fans at the end of the video.
That's exactly right.
I didn't want to start with that because that's a bit much.
No, of course not.
So yeah.
Awesome, man. Cool. Well, great. Thank you for having me on. It's always a pleasure. 2
more weeks. Every other Thursday, guys. Every other Thursdays we go live at lunch. If there's any topics that you want us to discuss, our plan is to kind of go through and talk about like current events and what's going on in real estate and mortgage and just anything that's happening in Charleston. But because this fell on the first day of hurricane season, I figured this was the most important topic to discuss this week. And we probably could have kept going. But we're at about 50 minutes. And I think our limit is about 5 before people start to get sick of us. So
probably.
Like we've been rambling on long enough. So if you made it to the end, thanks for watching. I'll link that video down below, and then I've got some links to some random stuff if you need to start researching your hurricane stuff. I've got a list down there. Go straight to Amazon if you want to pick up those phone chargers, generators, battery powered generators, solar generator. There's everything down there. I just started throwing stuff in there.
Yep. Perfect.
You can never be over prepared.
That's right.
That's all I got to say. So if you think you're over prepared, you're probably prepared not enough.
Exactly.
So, all right. Well, Chris, thank you so much. And
of course, you're welcome.
We will be back in 2 weeks.
Sounds like a plan. See you then.